Professor Koh, thank you so much for taking time off this afternoon to share your experience with us about participating in the World Cities Summit. I have just a few questions for you. The first one is regarding Singapore and the summit. Now, Singapore regularly punches above its weight in the international arena. Can you comment on Singapore's role in hosting World City Summit and Mayors Forum, which is now in the 3rd edition? How significant is this homegrown event in terms of exercising international leadership and extending our soft power?
I wouldn't use the word punching above our weight because it's too boastful. And the term soft power is not liked by political scientists because they think there's no such thing. So let me answer your question in a different way.
Sure.
I say as a small country, we have to try to be relevant and useful to our neighbors and to the world. And being a thought leader in an important emerging field is being relevant and useful. So one of the historic shifts in the world is urbanization. As you know, we have already crossed the halfway mark, and I think by 2050, 80% of the population of the world will live in cities and urban settlements. So we are living in an increasingly urban world. The challenge to the world is, can we make our cities livable, safe, and sustainable? And I think in this area, Singapore can make a contribution. So I would say by hosting the biennial World City Summit, we are trying to make a contribution.
It's a little bit like our corporate social responsibility, in a sense, as a member of the global community, to share with others what we have gone through.
And to come up with innovative and new ideas, you know. I mean, give you one example. Most people think that the city is the enemy of nature, that the city destroys nature and is hostile to the environment. Singapore has made the point to the world that, first of all, don't demonize cities, because the majority of us now live in cities. So why don't we embrace the cities, but encourage the cities to become nature-friendly, environment-friendly? And one of the things we've pioneered is to persuade the UN community to adopt the idea that cities can conserve and promote biological diversity. You know? So last year, when the contracting parties to the UN Convention on Biological Diversity met in Nagoya, they adopted the Singapore's Biodiversity City Index. So that's an example, you know, where Singapore has made a contribution to the world, and now about 50 cities are using our index. So just one example.
Many of Singapore's innovation, both in the technology part and also in the policy part, are really creative and innovative responses to our own unique circumstances. I'm talking about the congestion charts, ERP, the public housing response, or even the way that we come up with the tree taps for the water. These are really unique responses due to our unique circumstances. How relevant do you think these Singapore's experience and expertise would be for other cities, whether they're developing or in the emerging regions?
It is true that being small, we have made a virtue out of necessity. But the things that we pioneered are relevant to all cities, whether big or small. You know, all cities need to provide housing for its people. And there are very few cities in the world, and especially in Asia, that have solved the housing problem. In Singapore, we can say that no matter how poor you are, the state will help you to find a place to stay. And the state will encourage as many of you as possible to actually be homeowner, you know. There are large numbers of people in Asia that don't have access to safe drinking water and basic sanitation. In Singapore, these are givens, you know. And the point I wanted to make this morning at the meeting is that it is not technology. A colleague from India said, well, we can't afford to buy the technology, therefore we can't afford to give our people safe drinking water. No, it's not technology. The technology is in fact quite cheap and is freely available. And I've maintained that there's no country, no city in Asia too poor to afford all its citizens safe drinking water. If there's a political will to do so, and if they practice good governance and good water policy. So I think that we are able to say, you know, and show to other cities that wish to look to us for inspiration, that you can provide housing to your people, you can provide sustainable transportation, you can have a good balance between urbanization and greenery.
In Singapore, as a provision of urban solutions, so the World City Summit really is tailor-made to showcase what we can contribute to the world.
But we must be open-minded too, because it's a platform for mutual learning, you know. We should also learn from other cities. So for example, from the lecture this afternoon, I learned for the first time, which I did not know, that in Hong Kong, they use seawater for flushing their toilets, which I did not know, you know. So is that something worth looking into? I think we should look into whether it would make sense if we use seawater for flushing. Yeah.
Now, in your professional life, you've traveled to many places and you've also lived in many countries, different countries. Can I ask you to speculate on the future of cities in the world? Maybe we start with looking at Asian cities. What do you think are the challenges that Asian cities face and they need to overcome in order to be more livable and more sustainable for the longer term?
Most of the mega cities of the world, and especially those in Asia, are not well governed. And Tokyo is a shining exception. And therefore I was very pleased that the governor of Tokyo was able to join us this morning, you know. Because I think the mega cities in Asia can learn from Tokyo. How do you manage such a huge population and yet maintain your city which is clean, which is efficient, and afford the citizens a reasonably high quality of life, you know? If we are building new cities, and Asia will build many new cities, I think we should build new cities which are eco-city, like the eco-city China and Singapore are building in Tianjin. But the larger responsibility is to retrofit old cities, to make old city, to reinvent old city, to make them clean and sustainable, you know. And here we should look west, because not so many years ago, both London and New York were dysfunctional cities. You know, they were polluted, they were unsafe, they had terrible conditions. In 30 years, New York has turned around, you know, and is now the winner of the Lee Kuan Yew World City Prize. So my message to the old cities is that please do not assume that because you're an old city, your problems are insoluble. Just look to the old cities of the West, how they've succeeded in overcoming their problems and reinventing themselves. And if you're a medium-sized city, there are cities such as Singapore and others, you know, that have done a reasonably good job, you know, in providing a very green and livable environment. And if you're building new cities, then look to Tianjin as a role model.
So really, the message is come to the next World City Summit and learn from one another. Learn from cities big, small, old and new.
I would say that the World City Summit in Singapore has emerged as a very important platform for both national policy makers and mayors and municipal leaders to get together with academics, together with industry, together with civil society, to share with each other both the problems and the best practices. Yeah? It's a unique platform for mutual learning.
Well, thank you very much for your comments. I think it's spot on. Thank you so much for your time.